Let's go to chapter 2, verses 10 and following, and pick up where we left off with Ruth's question as to why she found such amazing favor in Boaz's presence from him and through him from God, and ask what her answer means, or what Boaz's answer to her question means. Verse 10, then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner? Now here's his answer, verses 11 and 12. Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. And then he shifts and changes her question, interprets her question a little differently. She's asking, why have I found favor in your eyes? And he's also going to answer why she finds favor in God's eyes, because I think in his mind and in hers, they both know Boaz is the instrument of God's favor and blessing here. And so he says in verse 12, the Lord recompense you. The Lord reward you. Yes, I'm giving you grain. I'm giving you food. I'm giving you protection from these young fellas. The Lord recompense you for what you have done. So God is the one who's really over you and blessing you. The Lord recompense you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel. And then this very crucial phrase, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. So let's take his answer in pieces, in stages. Why have I found favor? Ruth asks, and his answer is, because you loved Naomi. Because you were faithful to Naomi. I've heard the story. I've heard the story about you. I've seen what kind of woman you are. And now I've seen it lived out in this day here. You've loved Naomi. You've left your own father. You've left your own mother. You've left your own God. You've embraced Naomi. You've embraced her God. Now, we need to ask a theological question here. Is Boaz saying, I bless you and God blesses you because you have earned our blessing? There's the faith and works issue here. Is his conception one of merit and debt and earning, sort of like an employment situation where an employee puts in a good day's labor, does what he's supposed to do, and now the employer is in his debt and has to pay a wage? Is that the way he's conceiving of the blessing that's coming to her through him, both from him and from God? And she says, why have I received this blessing? And he says, you've earned it. Is that what he's saying? You've earned it? I don't think so. And there's clues in the text as to why we're not to think that way, and they're given in verse 12. As he shifts from him being the blesser to God being the blesser, he also shifts to something deeper and under the deeds that she's done that are so admirable, to a place where she's resting. Let's read verse 12 again. The Lord recompense you for what you have done. Yes, there's the deed. God sees it. God approves of it in his mercy, and God honors it. We will be rewarded according to our deeds. But there's something deeper going on. A full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel. And then come these words, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. The image in his mind is not employee, employer, not debt and wage, not merit. The image is an eagle, a big, strong eagle, God manifesting his care through Boaz, in his gentlemanly, fatherly, he calls her daughter, fatherly care over this young woman, an eagle. And what Ruth has done to find favor in this eagle's work is to hide in him. She has taken refuge under the wings of God, under the wings of the eagle. Now, the reason I feel justified in saying that there's a causal relationship there between her hiding under the wings of God and God's delight in blessing her is because I find that almost verbatim in Psalm 57:1, where it says this: "Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for," there's the ground clause being introduced, "for in thee my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of thy wings I will take refuge." This is so theologically significant. You've got to get this. If you want to get the gospel, if you want to see the foreshadowings of the glorious gospel of justification by faith in the Old Testament, you get alert to these kinds of arguments. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me. And she feels like she's getting mercy from Boaz. I'm a foreigner. I don't deserve anything. Why are you treating me this way? And that's so, God so delights in that kind of attitude. Why? So be merciful to me. She's calling out, or this psalmist is calling out for mercy here, but the psalmist doesn't act as though mercy has no correlation between the way we posture ourselves before God. So he says, because, have mercy on me because, but then he doesn't say, because I've worked so hard for you. That wouldn't be mercy anymore, would it? That wouldn't be mercy. Mercy is poured out on whom? For in thee my soul takes refuge. This is the way we argue with God. This is the way we lay claim on God's mercy. Not because of anything we are or anything we do except desperation. That's what we have to offer God. Desperation, helplessness. I'm hiding. I'm looking for a hiding place. That's all I've got to offer is fear of death and hell and my own sin and how wicked and unworthy I am. And I'm coming to you. You're my only hope. If your wings are extended and there's a shadow there, I'll hide there. If we will talk to God that way, no matter what we've done, all of God's zeal for His own glory will come into play on our behalf. Because what we're saying in that moment is, I don't expect anything from you because of what I am. But what you are is glorious in grace and mercy and power and wisdom. I recognize it. There's no other place to go. I don't go to alcohol. I don't go to sex. I don't go to success. I don't go to family. I don't go to leisure. I don't go to the stock market. I don't go anywhere. I come to you. You're my only hope. When you talk to God like that, everything in His great self-exalting soul kicks in with infinite energy on your behalf. I think that's kind of the theology under this statement of she hid under the wings. And Boaz is saying, what I see in you, what I love in you, we're going to see this. This is a great love story in chapter 3, and we're going to get into chapter 3 tonight. It kills me. It's a great love story that comes here. This man is not just viewing her as a father. He is falling in love with her big time, and she with him. And the clues to that are delicate, subtle, beautiful, and they get more and more powerful and sexy as you go along. But right here, he is saying, what I love about you is you have hidden yourself in God. That's what, now let me finish the theology of faith and works here. He said, the reason I'm showing you favor is because you love your mother-in-law. He said that. So I don't want to sweep that under the rug. She has done a beautiful thing, given herself to this woman. and left her home. And he said, I love that about you. I'm moved by that. But now we ask, what's the relationship between the hiding under the wings of God and the feeling unworthy and the calling out for mercy and the childlikeness and the deeds? And I would say that the relationship is one of result and evidence. In other words, when you hide under the wings of God and you feel yourself loved, cared for, accepted, forgiven, protected, secured, so that all the fears of your life drain away, all the greed of your life for the world drains away, all your self-preoccupation drains away, and you're caught up in the all-sufficiency of your eagle God. You know what flows out of that? Love. Love for people flows out of that. Freedom from self-preoccupation flows out of that. Galatians 5:6. Neither circumcision nor uncircumcision is of any avail, but faith working through love. Faith working itself out through love. That's a picture, I think, of the theology of love and hiding faith in this book. So that's the answer, I think, that she gets to her question. Why have you found favor? Why have I found favor? He says a couple of things. He says, yes, I'm favoring you, but deeper than my favor is God's favor. And yes, I am moved by your life of love, but deeper than that, I and God are moved by your faith in God. You're hiding under His wings. Oh, that the Pharisees had gotten this when Jesus said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets, stoning those who are sent to you. How oft would I have gathered you together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is forsaken. The problem with Jerusalem was that they were self-sufficient. Who wants to be a little chick? I don't know if they only do this in the South or only did it 40 years ago, or now it's 50 years ago. But every Easter, we got chicks. They were purple and yellow and orange, and they didn't have any feathers yet. They were about 5 days old, and my mother would give us little chicks for Easter. And they were absolutely helpless. One of the saddest days of my life is playing bus with my sister with a wheelbarrow. I was the bus driver, my sister was the teacher, and my job was to get the chicks to school. In the bus, in the wheelbarrow. You can see what's going to happen. And I'm playing bus driver with the wheelbarrow like this, and this little chick jumps out the front of the wheelbarrow. Run over the chick. I killed the chick. I killed my chick, or her chick, I don't know, remember which. We had a funeral ceremony across the street. I had this big pet cemetery where I buried my dog, my chicks, my hamsters, my guinea pigs, my fish. Well, who wants to be a chick? And Jesus said, if you don't turn and become like little chicks, you won't ever have me as your Savior. And they didn't. Well, Ruth did. She was such a beautiful and powerful and great, strong, deep, meek, wise woman. And no wonder this man was utterly captivated by her. Now let's end our thoughts on chapter 2 by going back to Naomi. I said to you, you've forgotten it so long ago, that when this chapter began and it said Ruth happened to come to the field of Boaz, her kinsman, that's a ambiguous statement that the author writes that way to let you decide whether you are catching on to providence here or whether you think accidents just happen and God's not really running the world in detail. And I think Naomi now is given the honor in this book of answering that question in verse 20. Ruth comes back to Naomi, tells everything that's happened that day, and when she tells that it was Boaz whose field she worked in, the lights go on for Naomi. Boaz. Oh, Boaz. Yes, I do have this relative Boaz. And then ideas start to just tumble to her mind. Hope begins to spring up. And her theology now completes itself. She's had a grand theology of the sovereignty of God. He sent me away full. He brought me back empty. The hand of the Lord is against me. He's sovereign, but he's against me. And now, listen to the tune she is singing in verse 20. Blessed be he, that is Boaz, by the Lord. Blessed be Boaz. God bless you, Boaz. Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness, and I said everything hangs on what whose refers to. What's the antecedent of the relative pronoun whose? Whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. There are two reasons I think whose refers to God rather than Boaz. So I think what she's saying is this. God bless you, Boaz. God bless you. May the Lord bless you. For God's kindness, I now see, has not forsaken me and Ruth and Elimelech and Chilion, the one whose lines are about to be snuffed out by Ruth having no relative to marry. Reason number one is a parallel from Genesis 24:27. I'll just read it for you so you can take the time to look it up. Abraham has sent his servant to go get a wife for Isaac. God, in wonderful story of providence, I mean, it's all over the Bible. God's providence is all over the Bible, gets him exactly to the brother's house, and she's responsive, and it's all going to work out. And here's verse 27. The servant says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master, Abraham, who has not forsaken his kindness." These are almost identical words to this passage, this verse 20 in Ruth 2. Who has not forsaken his kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way to the house of my master. So he attributes this remarkable providential guidance right to the wife of Isaac, as God's kindness has not forsaken me. So I'm prone then to see similar wording here. Blessed be Boaz by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living, as she was just walking, looking for a field where there's some sheaves. And she happens to find this field, and it turns out to be Boaz's. And when Naomi hears that story, she basically is saying, this is no accident. This is the kindness of God, and her theology is complete. She now not only believes in a sovereign God, she believes that in it all, he's being kind to her. Elimelech died. Yes, he died. Chilion died. Yes, he died. It looked as though there was nobody to marry for the widow, and the name of Chilion and Elimelech come to an end. And now, providentially, she finds, Naomi doesn't even think of it, she finds Boaz. And all the hope springs to life in her heart. So I think she interprets the second reason, I said there were two, is just the wording. Think about it with me for a minute. It says, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. What would it mean for Boaz to say that about Boaz? Boaz's kindness has not forsaken the dead. That just doesn't work. Boaz, you could say, well, yeah, it kind of works, but it doesn't. Boaz is being kind to Ruth. That's the living. Well, in being kind to Ruth, he is, without knowing it, also on the brink of being kind to her father-in-law and her husband. But he doesn't know that, and it's just beginning, so it would be funny to say Boaz hasn't forsaken his kindness to Elimelech. That just doesn't work. But it does work well to say God looked like he had forsaken kindness to Elimelech and Chilion, but he hasn't. So those two reasons make me think that this is Naomi's great recovery of her faith. This is her interpretation of God's providence, and this is a beautiful honor to the Lord and his kindness. So, the conclusion of chapter 2 then is let's fall on our faces like Ruth before God in his mercy toward us. Let's bow down. Let's confess our unworthiness like she does. Let's take refuge under the wings of God like little chicks or little children. And let's be astonished. Remember the words this morning about astonishment. Let's be astonished at grace, not bitter providences. Let's be astonished when the providence is sweet and not just when it's bitter. Chapter 3. So we come to chapter 3 now, and we have Naomi exulting over the kindness of God. We have Boaz, a man so God-saturated that he greets his employees with, "Blessed be God," and they greet him, "Blessed be God." And Ruth, who is a woman under the wings of God, who has learned to rest like a little eaglet under the wings of an eagle, and to love at some cost to herself. What will be now the effect of people like that? What will they do when hope has sprung up? Now we're done with bitter. We're done with the bitter providences. There are no more bitter providences in this book. Everything from here on out is filled with sweet providences. It's like Job, only Job at the end got only one chapter for the turnaround, whereas here you get half the book for the turnaround. Well, let's read it and see. I would call this chapter strategic righteousness. And I want you to watch for righteousness, and we're going to talk about Ruth's righteousness and Naomi's righteousness and Boaz's righteousness, and how strategic, that is, planned and intentional it becomes, and lessons from each of them. Okay, verse 1. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek a home for you, that it may be well with you?" Isn't this an amazing turn? I mean, Ruth is the one who said that in the last chapter, "I'll go get some food and take care of you." Now Naomi is saying, "We got to get you taken care of." Where'd that come from? It came from hope. She's out of her depression. Depressed people can't think about other people very much. They're so consumed with their bitter providences, they don't strategize, they don't dream, they don't think about. They don't plan. They just cope. They just survive. But when they get healed, when they see God over them, and when they're freed to hope again, they start taking care of people. "My daughter, should I not seek a home for you, that it may be well with you?" Now, is not Boaz our kinsman? He's just so full of hope. She's so excited. She got a plan. Now, is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose maidens you were? See, he's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Oh, this really gets risky. "Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. Do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, and then go and uncover his feet and lie down. and he'll tell you what to do. That's incredible. He's kind of, I can't believe you're telling her to do this. What in the world is going on here? So, she replied, all that you say I will do. Isn't that amazing? He'll tell you what to do. Well, I guess he'll tell you what to do. Well, what? So we're kind of left hanging here. The readers just got to say, I can't believe you said that. I just can't believe Naomi is saying this. Okay, verse 6. So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had told her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And then she came softly, uncovered his feet, lay down. At midnight, the man was startled, turned over. Behold, a woman lay at his feet. Now, I remember how I struggled with this text back in 1984, wondering, is she perpendicular? Is she kind of overlapping like this? It's just, and we're just not told. It's all very subtle. He said, in verse 9, who are you? And she said, I am Ruth, your maidservant. Spread your skirt over your maidservant, for you are next of kin. Now, Naomi did not tell her to say that. So this is increasingly puzzling. I mean, this woman has earned our respect, and the author is testing you right now. He's testing you to see whether you believe this is all about a very loose woman and a very conniving mother-in-law, or whether something deep, profound, subtle is going on here. Those words were her own words, not Naomi's words. And therefore, I want to come back and say, what in the world is she saying? What is that? I am Ruth, your maidservant. Spread your skirt over your maidservant, for you are next of kin. And he said, it's like the only thing we ever hear coming out of this man's mouth. May you be blessed by the Lord. Don't you know anything else to say? May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. That's good. That's good. Daughter. Keep the daughter thing in front of you. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after younger men. He's no dummy. You have not gone after younger men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of worth. Now this next verse is absolutely stunning. It's midnight. They're under the stars. Everybody's asleep. She's under a blanket, washed, perfumed, dressed in her best, loose clothing. And he says, somebody else has a right to you first. This is incredible. You just want to say, I want to say, what a man. I don't know whether to say about Ruth yet, what a woman. I'm a little puzzled. So I'm coming back to rescue Ruth in a minute from all of our misgivings. But right now, I do want to say about Boaz, you are something else. Remain this night, and in the morning, if he will not do the part of the next of kin for you, well, let him do it. If he will do it, it is well. Let him do it. But if he is not willing to do the part of the next of kin for you, then as the Lord lives, I will do the part of the next of kin for you. Lie down till the morning. She lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. He said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. He's going to protect this woman's reputation. Nothing happened, but it sure would look like it did if anybody saw or knew. Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, bring the mantle you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and laid it upon her, and then she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did you fare, my daughter? And then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. You know, have you ever asked the question, why didn't he just marry Naomi? That's kind of one of these behind-the-scenes questions that's never even broached, never answered. He calls her daughter. She is Naomi's daughter-in-law. Naomi and Boaz might be similar ages. You could solve a lot of problems here if you'd... That's not part of the story, but it raises the question. And she doesn't ever answer it. She told her all that the man had done. These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. So he really cares about this woman, but he's not in love with her, the older woman. 18, she replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. All right. So under the banner of strategic righteousness, let's talk about Naomi's righteousness and Ruth's righteousness and Boaz's righteousness. Let's just take them one at a time, because I think that's what this chapter is showing. This chapter is showing a stunning picture of doing what's right against the American ethos of if it feels good, do it. When it feels good, do it. Here the lesson is these people have a law, have standards, have commitments, have higher vision than their bellies or their groin, and they act by principle. May not look like it on the face of it at times, but I'll try to explain why that is. So let's take Naomi first. 2 things that stand out about the strategy of Naomi's righteousness. The first thing is the sheer fact that she has one, and I already alluded to this. Naomi has a strategy. She has a plan. It puzzles us. It puzzles the living daylights out of us. Why in the world would she do it this way? But let's just think for a minute that she has one, because she didn't have any strategy before chapter 2, verse 20. But when the hope lit up in her life, her mind kicked in. And I just want to say, be hope givers to people. If your church is languishing, or your family is languishing, or you are languishing without a life plan, without a church plan, it just seems like you're dead in the water, there's a reason for that. And the answer is hopelessness. Hopeless people don't plan. Hopeless people don't dream. This woman's got a dream. If I could get them married, if I could get them married, then she'd have a name, and I'd have a nursing home, and life would open up before us. And so she begins to think and strategize. She wasn't doing any of that before she had hope. She couldn't even think of the possibility that there was a relative out there. And I have tasted that. I just plead in my ministry over and over again, God, continue to give me hope. Continue to help me see how big and resourceful you are. And when it looks like there are dead-end streets in the ministry, or things aren't going the way you want, pray your way through those blockages to see God again. God's a source of hope in your marriage, in your parenting, in your church life, in your professional life, in your health. He's a God of hope. He's called that over and over again in the Bible. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that by the power of the Holy Spirit you might abound in hope. Because hope produces love, strategies of righteousness and love. So just the sheer fact that she's got a strategy is a tribute to hope. Now, it's a very odd strategy, really odd. Verse 2, Boaz is your kinsman. That means he's a likely candidate to be your husband, according to the Levirate law of if your husband doesn't have a brother, then the next of kin would come in and marry the widow and bring up seed to the name. And now there's hope that might happen. So, go take a bath and put on some perfume and nice clothes and go down there and lift up his cloak and lie at his feet. And he'll tell you what to do. Well, I guess he will. What kind of conversation does she expect to happen, I wonder? This is a very risky maneuver. What is it about? Is it about getting him to have sex with her? Because if he could have sex with her, then surely he'd marry her. Some women think that way. Some teenage girls think that way. Get this guy to have sex with me, maybe he'll care about me or marry me. Is that what's going on here? Or is there something deeper, more subtle, more profound, and we're left without an answer? I'm not even sure where she lay down and how she did that and how this was conceived. But we're left with a question. We're left with a clear either or. Either there's going to be one passionate, illicit sexual event of intercourse here, or there's going to be a stunning scene of purity, integrity, and self-control with some meanings that we haven't caught on to yet. Which is it going to be? And that's where we leave. Naomi. So here goes Ruth. Now let's shift over to Ruth's strategic righteousness in verses 6 to 9. Verse 5, she goes down and she follows the instructions of Naomi. Naomi had said, Boaz is going to tell you what to do. But in fact, Ruth tells Boaz when he wakes up why she's come. She takes some initiative here. She's got her own understanding of what Naomi, and maybe they talked this through, maybe they didn't. I don't know whether Naomi's understanding of what she's intending and Ruth's understanding of her intention are exactly the same. They probably are, and they probably thought it through. My guess is the interpretation I'm going to suggest to you here is something that Ruth spoke to Naomi about and bounced off of her, seeking her wisdom, and they agreed on this strategy with this meaning. What is it? Well, she says, verse 9, he says, who are you? And she says, I am Ruth, your maidservant. Spread your skirt over your maidservant, for you are next of kin. Now that last phrase, you are next of kin, is crystal clear as to her intentions. I want to be your wife. Doesn't say it like that. She says it indirectly. You're my next of kin. Get it? I want you to be my husband. I want you to fill that role for me. So it's very clear, very powerful the way she ends that sentence. And she says, spread your skirt over me. Now, whether Boaz will take that as an offer of sexual relations or look for something more significant in those words will depend on his assessment of her character. Now, everything we've read up till this point in the book says fornication is wrong in the Old Testament. It's wrong in the New Testament. It's wrong in the Old Testament. So either this woman has had one colossal character change or something more than meets the eye is going on here. What is going on here? Two things point to a very subtle and profound act that is not an invitation for fornication. Number one, the only other place in the Old Testament that I could find where there's a reference to spreading the skirt over someone in a relationship is in Ezekiel 16:8, where God is talking about his betrothed Israel, whom he finds, as it were, a young maiden. So God is picturing himself as a suitor and a potential husband. Israel is his betrothed, and this is what it says in Ezekiel 16:8. God is speaking about himself here now. When I passed by you again and looked upon you, Israel, behold, you were at the age for love. And I spread my skirt over you and covered your nakedness. Yea, I plighted my troth to you and entered into covenant with you, says the Lord, and you became mine. Now, yes, that's sexual. Yes, it is. She's naked, and he's got a skirt, and he's going to put it over her. No doubting that this has sexual connotations, but way more than that. Because he says, in doing this, I plighted my troth to you. I made a covenant with you. I entered a covenant with you, says the Lord, and you became mine. So he puts this sexual part of the image into a covenant-making context. God makes Israel his own, and there's a covenant now unshakable there, so that the sweet intimacy that he's willing to talk of in sexual language between him and his bride is covenant intimacy. Now, I am inclined to think that when Ruth uses language like that, she is saying something like, I would like to be the one to whom you pledge your faithfulness and with whom you make a marriage covenant. Just like God spread his skirt over Israel and plighted his troth to her and made a covenant with her, and then, of course, enjoyed their sexuality in a context situation. I want you to do that for me. I want you to do that for me. That's the first reason I think more is going on here than just sex. The second reason is even more subtle and remarkable. The word skirt here is the same as the word for wing back in chapter 2, verse 12? Where it says, the Lord recompense you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose skirt or wings. It's the same Hebrew word. I wish there was some way for it to come out in English. Be odd, though, to talk about skirt in verse 12. But the Hebrew reader, when they got here and they heard her say, spread your wing, skirt, over me, they would hear verse 12. It's the only other place in the book where it's used. Let's think about this for a minute. I'll give you my summary sense of what I think is going on here. When Boaz said that day in the field, I don't know if it was the day before or more time elapsed, but not long ago, she said, "Why have I found favor in your sight?" And he says, "Because you love your mother so much. And in fact, what you're finding here, Ruth, and you know this, is that my kindness to you is really God's kindness to you. He has providentially brought you to my field. He has providentially put you in my heart. I am extending His kindness to you. And the reason is because you have put yourself under His skirt, under His wings. And now I am being for you the kindness of God. I am the skirt of God for you." Now, Ruth goes home thinking about those words. He said that He favored me. He was kind to me. He went out of His way to protect me from the young guys. Because I had taken refuge under God's wing or skirt. And so Boaz is in the place of God. And so in a sense I've come under His wing. She tells this to Naomi. They talk about it. It's not easy for an older man to fall in love with a younger woman. I talk not from my experience here, but from a recent counseling situation. I can imagine, I'm 55, and I can imagine if Noel died and I fell in love with a 35-year-old woman. I don't let myself think about this too much because that's not healthy. It's not good for a husband to do. But I would think of all the insecurities I would feel at that time. I mean, good grief, my hair's thin on top. Well, there's a man in my church who I would love to marry off to a particular woman. I want this to work. And so I went at it. And my wife has done this 3 times in our church. She's arranged marriages. And they all great marriages. I mean, this American dating stuff is just for the birds, especially when you get over 40. Just make it work, find me somebody if God is calling. So anyway, I contacted both of them and talked to them both, said, could I talk to so-and-so about you? Could I talk to so-and-so about you? And they said, well, I suppose. Now, he is 12 years older, I think. At least 12, maybe 15. This did not work, by the way. They tried it and worked on it for a few months and just had a wonderful mutual agreement that with the kids and everything, it just wasn't right. So they were both widowers, widow and widower. But in talking with him, I got a flavor of what it might have been like for Boaz. Because he said to me, this is really awkward. And I don't know if she'd want me. And I just inside and say, oh, she would want you, Come on, you're a great guy. These years don't matter at this age, like 45 and 32 or whatever. So I think Boaz here, the reason they don't just come out and say, you need a kinsman redeemer, I'm the kinsman redeemer, let's get married. It's just not that simple. It's not emotionally that simple. And that's why this dance is going on here, I think. He's hinting to her, you've come under the wings of God, and I love that about you. And I am representing God in kindness to you, protecting you, providing for you, protecting you from these young guys. And so I am the skirt and the wing of God. And she goes home and tells Naomi about this, and Naomi says, and Ruth says, how about if we try this? We'll go down there, and you'll be ready for marriage. And you will go under that blanket, and you'll wait, and we will test to see if this man is worthy of you. And when he wakes, Ruth says, spread your wing over me. Kind of like, will he remember? And he, imagine the pregnant moment of silence here as he says to himself, I think something like, can this really be happening? Could she have been that sensitive? Could she be reading that deeply into my soul that when I said, I love your taking refuge under the wings of God, she really could have heard me saying, I want you under my wing because you're under God's wing. And she's saying to herself, I hope I've got this right. I hope he meant what I think he meant, because I'm otherwise inviting a man to commit a grave evil. And she says, stretch forth your wing and put it over me. And in that silence, I think that's got to be one of the most powerful sexual moments imaginable. She got it. He got it. I know this is my interpretation, and I could be wrong. I just think this is probably what's going on because of this link up between the word wing, between verse 2:20 and verse 9 here. In that moment, he's got a choice. He can say, well, he's got lots of choice. He could say, she's really not a very reliable woman offering herself to me in this way. Or he could say, what a risk she's taking to interpret my words the way I really wanted them to. And she got it. I've got a soulmate here of unbelievable gift. And he could say, let's do it. Let's just do it. You're here. We'll do the marriage later. Sex. It's midnight. They're under the stars. Everybody's asleep. She's all bathed and beautifully prepared. And he's a man. And he says, there's a righteousness to be followed here. There is another person who has a claim on you. I'm back. Now I'm willing to say, not only do I stand in awe of this man, but I also stand in awe of Ruth. I don't think Ruth is a loose woman. I don't think Naomi is a conniving mother-in-law. I think they pondered, here's an older man. He's old enough perhaps to be your father. You just don't go up to a man old enough to be your father and say, marry me. And he just doesn't go up to a young, beautiful, believing woman that all the young men want at and say, how about me? There's got to be a subtle little dance here, like birds. You know, you've seen birds that dance around each other. And so we're going to take that word that he said and we're going to play on it tonight and see if we are right and take a big risk. And you be ready to run if we're wrong. But they don't think they're wrong, and he doesn't prove them wrong. And he says, you're a woman of worth, and I'm a man of principle. I'll get it done tomorrow morning. And maybe tomorrow night it'll be right. So I want to leave you with that. I want to stop here. And just want to say, Americans, don't sell yourself short. Don't buy into it. When it's late and you're all alone and the stars are out and she's there or he's there and the blood is thudding through your body and nobody will know except God, Do what Boaz did. Stop it until it is covenant. Until it's in a covenant relationship. And God will be so pleased. The rest of this story is all about the beauty of the consummation and what it brought forth. I'm sure it brought forth all the physical pleasures they wanted, but it brought forth Jesus. And that's what I want my marriage to bring forth. I mean, when all the hot orgasms are over and you get old and it's not the same anymore, you want Jesus to have been the real issue of this marriage. You want your life to have counted for something bigger than what dogs do. Sexual life is a beautiful thing when it's caught up into something big and covenant-like, and there are stronger, deeper commitments than your guts. When you have a righteousness that you're committed to, and you have laws and principles and standards that you're committed to them. Oh, how we need to breed this into our young people so that they feel a sense of nobility about it, a sense of beauty and depth and strength about it. And to be chaste is a great thing in America, instead of something to be clucked at in the high school locker rooms. You've never done it? I mean, I want a daughter, my little Talitha, and I want 4 sons who, when they hear that kind of laughter and that clucking and that mockery, to just look at people and say, you're a fool. You are an absolute fool. This thing called sex is so great. It is so big. It is so powerful. It is so precious. It is so diamond-like. I house it in a magnificent box of velvet covenant, not the back seat of a car or a blanket in the lagoon. Oh, that we might raise up generations like Boaz. Maybe tomorrow night it will be right, not tonight. Let's pray. Father, there's so much in this book, so many layers of lessons. We stand in awe of righteousness lived out. We love a love story, but not a love story that's just built around emotion, that's built around covenant faithfulness, commitment, higher things than sex. So, Lord, grant, I pray, that we would all get it here, live it here, breed it into our nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters and children and friends, be salt and light in a culture that has just sold its body and soul to feeling. Thank you so much for your teaching us and for your giving us a heart for these things. Keep it, oh God. Be mighty. Be the fiber in the trunk of the tree of the faith of these men and women in this room. I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.